Greetings and salutations everyone, I'm back with another video. Gonna have a little bit of a change here because this is more like a summer recap, not of what I've watched at home, but what I was actually able to make it out to the theaters to see, which has always been my preferred way of seeing movies. So first time back in the theater early in the summer, I was able to get out and see A Quiet Place Part 2. And this one was a really great follow-up to the first film. You know, it does a great job of showing you some of the background, just how quickly the situation that all these characters are in had started just out of nowhere. So you get this nice little flashback setting that up. And they also, add some more characters into the mix too. They have Jaimin Hunsu and Cillian Murphy brought into it. Both do a great job. They also open up this story a bit more to show that there's more than just these creatures being the danger out there. Like we see in shows like Walking Dead, sometimes it's not the evil creature coming after you that's as dangerous as just regular old people who are not handling, this situation, this almost end of the world kind of situation that well. And yeah, they did a great job. Personally, I would love to see at least one more of these films to kind of wrap things up and maybe explain a little bit more about, where these creatures came from. After that, went back out a couple weeks later, finally got to see Black Widow. And this felt a little bit more like a Bourne Identity film or some other sort of spy action film, and not as much like what I had, usually come to expect from a Marvel film. They did do a really good job with it, but this story takes place between Civil War and Infinity War, and I really think that Marvel missed an opportunity to have released this film in chronological order back then. They seem to be dragging their feet on making a Black Widow film for too long, so by the time they made it, of course they had to make this as kind of a prequel into some of the movies, but storyline wise, I think it works out great. It's a great way to bridge those two films, but I think whenever I rewatch any of these Marvel films, I'm probably gonna put this one in its chronological place because I think it works that way better than, telling some backstory on, on Black Widow. Speaking of superheroes, also got out to see The Suicide Squad, a movie which I had no intention of seeing for a long time. Even with the director that they had, I just wasn't interested in it because the first one I thought was okay. Didn't see why they would even be making another one since the first one didn't seem to be received all that well. Well, I was wrong. This just kind of shows that when you have the right director and writers involved who really know the material and care about it, you get The Suicide Squad. It's almost like an apology for the first film. They did a really good job of cycling out some of the older characters from the first movie and bringing in some new ones while keeping a few of them from that first movie. So they kind of balance things out without overloading it with too many characters where you can't really care about any of them. They did a great job of bringing some really absurd situations to the screen in a way that makes you care about every character and the outcome of everything. I hadn't really seen anything like this from DC as far as just a level of quality. And I kind of always view the Christopher Nolan Batman movies as like their own separate entity in a way because you seem to have more control over that. But honestly, I think this was one of the best. I put this right up there with Wonder Woman, and I was really glad that I got out there to check it out. Makes me want to check out some more James Gunn work as well. After this, I also got out to see Free Guy. My expectation for Free Guy was just gonna be some stupid comedy movie with a lot of gaming pop culture stuff. And that would be very shallow, not much to it, but it's just going to be some big, explosive, special effects filled fun. It's another one that I was kind of wrong on. While it did have all of that, there was a lot more going on in this movie. It wasn't as shallow as I thought. The humor was done very well. I think it's going to age really well also. And this was one that was great to see on that giant Dolby Atmos screen with the giant sounds. Definitely want to check out in the theater. I was very surprised with just the quality of it. Thought it was excellent and definitely highly recommend that one. Speaking of recommendations, another one here is Candyman. People have been talking about this for a while. It had a lot of buzz when they were told that Jordan Peele was producing this. But what I don't understand is why people are calling this a spiritual sequel or a soft reboot. It's not. It's just a sequel to the first movie, flat out. It even takes place in Chicago. It references the events of the first movie and how they have been remembered over the last 27 years or so or 29 years since the first movie came out. They do a really good job of bringing all that in, bringing you up to speed if you either never saw the first movie or haven't seen it in decades. And but really also focusing on building the characters of this story and what's happening in this story well enough that while the first film was almost like a launching point for a film like this is putting enough into it and really pulling you in to where I would love to see more of these. Give me at least 2 more of these movies. I think they can really bring this franchise back. And, I think they did a really great job. Nia DaCosta is the director and one of the writers, and she just did a great job bringing this franchise back. So it can only really be seen as a reboot in that it's bringing this franchise back. But it's with a sequel, not with an actual reboot of the first movie. And finally, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. This is another one that I didn't really know what to say about it, except it was really good. I had been avoiding most stuff about this movie. I think I'd seen one of the trailers, but other than that, just didn't want to know anything about it. Figured I would see it when I see it. And so I wasn't really expecting anything out of it, and I had no expectations, but I was really surprised at certain aspects of this, such as there being a lot more fantasy and magic, wrapped up in this kind of portion of the MCU. So I could see how all of this is going to link eventually to some of the Doctor Strange stuff and some of the Scarlet Witch stuff that's going to be, coming up in some of the future films. So balancing between, the current day San Francisco stuff and then off in the middle of like some, middle of nowhere, all this fantasy and magic. It was a really great, for a movie that I thought it's probably just going to be more of like a martial arts film, and didn't realize that we'd have all that other fantasy and magic going on. Another really great one. So those are the ones that I got to make it out to. Some were really worked out for me. I was very picky on what I actually went out to see, so that's why I ended up liking everything that I went to see. I wasn't going to risk going out on something that I really wasn't sure about. So, I'm fully vaxxed, and wore mask going into the theater and coming out. But I hadn't been to the movies in 16 months, and that was the longest stretch for me for not going to the theater, I think, since I'd first been to the theater when I was a kid. We would always go out when I was growing up a couple of times a year. So for me to take 16 months away, and the last movie I saw was Birds of Prey, which, I know some people loved it. I really didn't care for it. I was really itching to get out there. Quiet Place 2 was what kind of brought me back in, and with all the other movies coming along, it was just great to get back into the theater again. Which I was really missing that theater experience. I enjoy the convenience of streaming, and I understand that for some people that's their best option, even their only option. But for me, the theater is always where it's going to be at. Nothing beats a giant screen, that giant sound, and the whole audience experience. There are times when some people in the audience, you have some of those bad apples that kind of screw things up, messing around on their phone or making noise or whatever. But, there's something about sitting in the theater. Let's say you're at the end of A Star is Born or Endgame, and you hear the audience reaction and you're kind of wrapped up in that with them. You just can't get that at home. Not to mention the fact that it's, the screen is so giant. Even for comedies, it kind of pulls you in there. And when I get pulled into those theaters like that, another thing I like about the theater is that I can't pause it. I can't, pause it, and I also paid more for it. So I have to get my money's worth, pay attention, sit there, watch it, finish it right then. There's been a lot of cases where I go to stream something at home, and in that convenience of just having it available, I might get 10 minutes into a movie and just get bored with it and turn it off. Even if I didn't give that movie enough of a chance to really engage me, or maybe I was getting distracted by something else at home. When I spend money to see something, especially in the theater, especially with concession, I'm going to pay attention to it and give it every chance that it deserves to make sure I get my money's worth. So yeah, I want theaters to survive. I know they had a lot of problems during the pandemic, of course, since many of them had to shut down for a while. And I know we're going to see some changes now in how films are released, but for me, for now, I'm going to go to the theater every chance that I can. I'm going to refuse to do any of the same day streaming at home. I'm going to buy a ticket to help the filmmakers. I'm going to buy a concession to help the theaters. And hopefully, as things are getting safer and safer out there, we'll see more people wanting to, get out to revitalize the theaters as well. So anyways, that's my quick little video about my experience this summer finally getting back into the theater after 16 months away. I liked all the things that I'd seen. I highly recommend all of them. I just want to thank you for checking out this video. If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. It definitely helps the channel out. Leave a comment if you like, and of course, be sure to share it as well. Check out some of my other content, and I'll see you guys in the next one.